My name is Leia. I have stiff person syndrome. I got diagnosed in May 2021, and it took 5 years to diagnose me. To get to a diagnosis, it was really hard because there was flares of stiffness, flares of pain, flares of limited mobility. By the time I got diagnosed, I quickly progressed. I had hyperreflexes, and my most annoying stimuli was sound. Sound has gotten better with treatment, but funnily enough, light has popped in. I do not have touch because stimulation is a big part of the disease and hyperreflexes as well. I have extreme rigidity. I am stiff constantly. The only parts of my body that can move freely and that are not stiff are my hands and my elbows. But the rest of my body is completely stiff all the time. Treatment has helped a little bit in spasms, but I walk with a cane. Because I'm so stiff, I just keep hurting myself. My knee cracks, and then suddenly, like, I tear a ligament, I have a muscle tear. I don't even need to walk anymore to hurt myself. And the more injuries you have, the more difficult it becomes because you have to stay in bed a little bit more. And then, you pick up the physical therapy or the swimming. Or I've been unlucky. I've caught couple of pneumonias. I used to swim, that used to help a lot. And I haven't been able to get in a pool since summer of 2022. So it's almost been 2 years. And that really helped because water really helps to stretch so that you get less stiff and eventually to pick up with, movement and mobility. We're all different. And I think that's the message I really have to get across. And that's a message that technically around the press and what's happening right now is not getting across. And that's why we need funding for research. It's crucial. And it's like you've met one person with stiff person syndrome, you've met one person with stiff person syndrome. There might be some similarities, but globally, we're all different. I have to make it clear that it's a spectrum. So if I would describe my experience with stiff person syndrome is quick deterioration, constant stiffness, the obvious spasms. Stiff person syndrome as well makes it very difficult to live in society because it's difficult for people to ask to adapt to you all the time. Obviously your loved ones will accommodate, or I've heard some stories where they don't, but I'm lucky in that sense that they do. But friends will accommodate from time to time, but at a certain point, can we go to a restaurant where it's a bit not too noisy? Can we go to a restaurant where the windows are open? It becomes a bit lonely. I grew up between several countries in Europe. I was born in France. I did my secondary schooling in Spain. I did my university and my first couple of jobs in the UK, London. I specialized in an MSc in international public policy at UCL. I got a very good offer to do some political consulting in Lebanon. I had never lived there before, so I actually moved there at the age of 26. From there, I did the political science job analyst just for a year, and I ended up in nonprofits. And for the first one, I was a manager, and then for the last one, I was a director. And due to the quite quick progression of my stiff person syndrome, despite the fact that I work remotely, I had to submit my resignation on the 31st of December 2023. It was difficult because I've always thought of myself as a career woman, someone that is independent in all sense of the term. But when it comes to the career, it is important. It defines a part of who I am. And so I'm happy that I do have the advocacy on the side. I was gaslighted by the medical community for 5 to 6 years. I was called crazy. And, I think everyone kind of knows, when it's a rare disease and the criteria to diagnose the disease is a bit difficult. People, experience that. But it was very difficult because, I have type 1 diabetes since I'm 11. I have endometriosis. So I know my body quite well. And to be constantly called crazy or saying that there's nothing wrong with me, like, was a very difficult period at the time. I got married to my husband, and he works in West Africa. And despite all these symptoms aggravating, I moved to West Africa. And at the beginning of January 2021, it wasn't just flares anymore, because before it was flares, they would come and go. I would get stiff at the back, stiff in the hip, a bit of pain. Suddenly, within 3 months, I couldn't go downstairs. I couldn't lay down on my back without spasming. I couldn't turn. I had to put stuff in front of me because my arms wouldn't go backwards. I had no idea where it was going, and the pain that came with it. And then suddenly my husband was like, Leah, there's something really wrong with you. You need to go to Lebanon. You can't wait till we go in summer. Like, I can see the pain in your eyes. It's funny though, I always thought going up the stairs was more difficult than coming down. And as I got stiffer and my mobility reduced, going down the stairs, I had to have support and go 1 foot with the second foot, then 1 foot. It was a bit traumatic in the sense that I didn't know what was happening. And so I arrived back to Lebanon. I went to see a traumatologist because I have several discs in my back. I thought, oh, maybe something's wrong with my back. And the moment he examined me, he's like, how are you still standing? And I was like, why? He's like, you are so stiff. And I was like, yes, I know. And it's painful. He's like, it's not just painful, it's probably outrageously painful. And it was the first acknowledgement that I got. And he said, I'll do an MRI for you, but I'm going to point you to neurology. And I told him, are you sure? Because this is most of the doctors that call me crazy. He said, yes, I'm pretty sure. I went to neurology just by the clinical exams, but I did everything else afterwards. My first neurologist said, I think you have something called stiff person syndrome. I had told her that I was trying to research my symptoms, and I was, adamant to find something. And she looked at me and she's like, have you ever heard of stiff person syndrome? And I looked at her and I was like, no, I mean, I thought I had something like rheumatoid arthritis. I was going down that path. And so that also pushed her in the right direction. Unfortunately, it's so rare, it's difficult to treat. I was so happy when I got a diagnosis because I felt acknowledged. Little did I know that it was going to be one of the most difficult things that has happened in my life, if not the most difficult thing. The doctor was a bit scared of moving forward. I did regimen of muscle relaxants and benzodiazepines, but wasn't enough. I started having to walk with a cane. I kind of lost my right leg in the sense that it's stiff and it's gone. So I Googled best doctor for stiff person syndrome, and Dr. Scott Newsom at Hopkins came up. And in my search for a diagnosis, I had gone to Hopkins in 2019. So for my parents, it kind of made sense to go back to Hopkins. It's funny because I had seen a rheumatologist at the time who told me there's a lot of things that I see wrong in your body, but I cannot put a name to what you have. And reading back his notes, he's like, back stiffness. Because of anxiety, due to a doctor saying she had anxiety, she noticed that while taking a benzodiazepine, her stiffness lowered. It was kind of connecting all the dots, which was just, very interesting. I started seeing Dr. Scott Newsom, and, I'm full on to treatments like plasmapheresis and rituximab and Botox and all these things, like I have a fistula and stuff. This is a day at a time because I've lost a lot and I've gone down significantly quickly and progressed significantly quickly. What happened was when I got diagnosed and I finally understood that it was something serious and I wanted answers to my questions, I couldn't find much. I found a couple of Facebook groups. They weren't to my liking so much. I reached out. I did some voluntary work for a foundation. I tried to do as much as I could to try to feel connected. And the foundation that I did some voluntary work did, at the time, the person who was head of communication did a video on me, which went viral. And bent not broken, autoimmune is a play on words. So us stiff person people, we're bent. But what I like to communicate on my page is that we're not broken, we're strong. We can't let the bent win. And then autoimmune, because autoimmune disease, and it's linked to a lot of other autoimmune diseases. And initially, it was meant to be a platform for people to share their stories. Not many people came forward. So at the beginning, I included some doctors' testimonies, some fun stuff, and then I just started talking. And the Bent Not Broken picked up, and it built a community that I have no idea how it happened. I never intended, but what I've achieved is so beautiful and so gratifying. People have met that live in the same country, and they've actually met properly through the page. People have become friends virtually. And I think COVID has allowed that. That you don't need to actually be in front and touch someone to become friends, because we spoke so much through the computer during that time that it feels normal to talk to someone via a screen. The more I started sharing my story, and the more I started including other people who then decided to talk, and the more I got this feedback of, you give so much on your platform. And I got feedback from people who suffer from chronic illness, not just SPS. So it was a global message. And from people who actually are not sick, because there are bits and pieces that they took from whatever I would say that would apply to them. This is the feedback I got. And I mean, I even had a feedback from someone that has SPS who told me, you inspired me so much that from bed, I created a business again, and I'm working. I'm 37 years old now. I created this when I was 35. I was diagnosed when I was 34. And me being a career woman, knowing that I excelled in my studies and everything, this must have been one of the most gratifying moments in my life. It helps me. I've met some amazing people through there that helped me through my journey, and it's led to other things. I mean, a spin-off of a YouTube channel with one of the people I've met called Heart to Heart. And it's the topics that doctors cannot talk about, because you have to have SPS to actually, talk about things, a social life, how it changes, acceptance, pain, your mental health, triggers, people from the past, do they still treat you the same way? The world is my oyster here in terms of advocacy to carry on doing more. And I am determined to not let a patient feel the same way I felt once I realized that my diagnosis was so rare and there was not much information out there, that I want this access of information to anyone who gets diagnosed. The day she came out with her video, I have a video of me, but I just cried. I cried so much when my mom called me and she told me, Leia, Celine Dion has stiff person syndrome. I just took the phone and filmed myself crying. And I said, I don't understand why I'm crying so much, where this is so emotional. I'm really sorry for her. And then I just said, but maybe in a way, this may help our disease, because, someone who's famous, bless her, I wish her all the best. It's not that I'm happy that she has SPS, but I was like, okay, maybe SPS would start being recognized, and, the misdiagnosis. That's what I started thinking. Now I have to give it to her. I say I have stiff person syndrome, people don't understand. And I say I have the Celine Dion disease, and people, clock on. She's put it on the map. Research and investment in research is so crucial. I've just launched a fundraiser with John Hopkins to raise $250,000 for research that's a drop, a coin in the bucket, but it's a beginning. I am doing everything that I can so that maybe I stop feeling how I'm feeling, but that so no one ever feels what I feel. No one has to make life changes the way I have had to make life changes at such a young age. We need much more research, because we need to educate the next neurologist, next people who specialize in neuromuscular, neuroimmunology diseases and neurodegenerative diseases, because at the moment there's not even a criteria doctors agree on. I wish that things advance